1. Hello, I'm Scott Soshnick.
And I'm Eben Novy-Williams, and this is the Martial Arts Meets March Madness sports business podcast, the Sporticast.
Don't like it. Donn Davis, we ask our guests to review the opening lines of Eben Novy-Williams. I mean, he had good energy. I'm going to give him the good energy. March Madness, I don't know. It's not apparent to me what the hell he's talking about. Where do you rate the opening of Eben Novy-Williams?
Look, every day is a good day for fighting, so I've got to give it a 10-point must round for Eben.
All right, we're going to have a split decision today then. But, Don, I have a really important question, and it's not fight-related.
Yep.
And we should say, by the way, Donn Davis, founder of Professional Fighters League. But it's not fight-related. It's about the other N on your name.
Yeah. I get this a lot. Now, luckily, I get it less now that I'm 60 years old than when I was 6 years old.
Yep.
My mom gave it to me. It's my full name. It's not Donald. It's Don, but I was named after my grandfather by my mom. And she liked the name Don, but didn't like the name Donald. So it's Donn, D-O-N-N. That's it, my mom.
Extra N. All right. And did it cause problems all throughout school? Name spelled wrong? Is this
No.
right? Was
Yeah,
it mix-ups?
spelled wrong a lot. Still spelled wrong a lot. But not too much grief, as grief goes for, a young kid. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there are certain people in sports that once I see the name and it registers, like anytime I see a story or we write a story about Dwayne Wade, I'm like, everybody, it's D-W-Y-A-N. Get it right. It's not your normal Dwayne. Donn Davis, I'm immediately double N. Like, it just goes there. We at Sportico should not get this wrong ever, and I don't think we have.
Yeah, and look, who would have known I didn't need a stage name? Real name. From Cincinnati, Ohio. Just a regular kid.
From Cincinnati. What can we say about Cincinnati?
Joe Burrow, big contract. What
Joe
do we
Burrow,
think
big
about the
contract.
Bengals?
Yeah,
Joe
big
Burrow,
red machine.
Cincinnati.
I saw 3 World Series by the time I was 12, and, those were the heydays.
I don't think Eben Novy-Williams, if I said David Concepcion, does that mean anything to you, Eben? Look at it. Does that make you cry, Don?
No. Yeah, but he would know Ken Griffey Sr., Big Red Machine.
Yeah.
He would know Joe Morgan, Pete Rose, Johnny.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Perez.
Don, nobody says Joe Morgan in my presence without giving me the batting stance imitation. I know this is audio, but people can see. Give me the do it together. There it is. Look at us. There we go.
That's a Sporticast first, guys.
That's a Sporticast first, but nobody says Joe Morgan without giving me that.
I'm a righty. I did it full lefty.
I saw you went lefty. I did too. This was the left elbow.
Of course, you got to do lefty.
Yeah, you have to do it right. All right, so Don, what do I need to know about PFL right now? Give me your top line. What do I need to know? What do fans need to know? If they are familiar with the product, and if they are not familiar with the product, what do fans need to know about PFL right now?
Yeah, for those who are not MMA fans, PFL is March Madness meets MMA. So it is the only one in combat sports. It's like the sport you love. So if you love the NBA or if you love the NFL, they have a regular season, playoff, and championship. It's called win and advance, lose and go home. Meritocracy. That's what we built at the PFL. So in the PFL, we start in April. We end in November. A fighter fights 4 times, and if they keep winning, they become champion. They raise the belt. They get $1 million bonus. They lose their first fight, done for the season.
Eat what you kill. That's it.
So there is no fake promotion. There is no artificial hype. It is like real sports. So if you've never watched MMA, like I don't watch college basketball, but I watch March Madness because I understand 16 versus 1, underdogs' journey, stories, and real stakes of win and advance of everything. That's the PFL. So if you watch MMA, I don't need to tell you because this year we're 50% of UFC's audience. What? These are not Donn Davis stats. These are Nielsen real numbers. I know you have some other MMA guys on your podcast who love to give their own stats. I give real Nielsen stats.
We could, by the way, we could have a whole discussion on having fun with Nielsen stats.
So to me, real audience, we do about 400,000 viewers per event on ESPN. UFC does about 800,000 viewers per event on ESPN. What? I've never heard of PFL, most people say. And I've heard that UFC all the time. I see every promotion. That's how exciting our product is. That's how good our fighters are. That's how next gen our production is. That in 5 years, we already have 50% of the UFC's audience. So if you've never seen it and you're a sport fan, check it out. November 24th, our championship. And if you're already watching it, you know this is a more exciting product in UFC because every fight matters and there's no artificial BS.
I've always felt, Don, like all the combat sports kind of lived and died by the talent and the personality of the stars in that sport at that time. And you're making an argument for structure of the sport actually being really important in that as well. How do you think about the tournament structure that you're talking about, and then the importance of having people like Francis Ngannou, one of the best fighters in the world,
developing a Conor, right?
And having how important that is, the personalities are to your business.
Yeah. So for simplicity, let's look at UFC's 40 fights a year. Because most fans know a UFC, they have 40 fights a year. A handful of those fights, we'll all know the fighters. Hey, I want to see John Jones. Hey, I want to see Conor McGregor. Hey, I wanted to see a Ronda Rousey in her day. So sometimes there's a big pay-per-view fight with a headline fighter that we all know. Fantastic. Okay, those take care of themselves. But those are very few. Call them 10% of the fights, a handful of the 40 fights a year. The rest, MMA is a sport where we don't know the names. This isn't like basketball. We don't know the names. It's more like the NFL, where you really have to know your team. There's a lot of we know quarterbacks, but we don't know a lot of the players unless I'm a Bengals fan. I know every Bengal. But, I don't know all the linemen of all the other teams.
Can I ask you something then, Don? Can I jump in?
Stuff. Yeah.
Can I jump in then? Just from a building a business standpoint, then I would counter with, so you require someone to be a fan of the discipline to tune in. How do you win a casual fan who may not be really into MMA, but casual interest? If it's not superstar, if I don't love the discipline, but I'm willing to check it out, how do you convert that person to a diehard fan of PFL?
That's great, Scott. And this is where the PFL comes in. This is where I was going on the second thing. The rest of the fights is an exciting fight with great fighters and a cool video product. That's where you win over the rest of the fans. And this is where PFL has grown so fast. So what do I mean by that? 25% of our rosters are ranked in the top 25 of the world. Once again, that's not a Don stat, that's Fight Matrix. They rank everybody, whether in Bellator, UFC, or PFL. So it's the same percentage, 25% of our roster is UFC. So if you tune in PFL Friday on ESPN or UFC Saturday on ESPN, you're actually watching the same quality of fighters. Ours might be ranked number 11 in the world. Theirs might be ranked number 13. Great fighters. You have to have great talent. I don't know their name, but they're great fighters. Number two, I have to have great action. PFL actually has a little bit better action. Why? If that fighter loses, they're done for the year. So you want to talk about stakes, drama, punches, kicks. In 15 minutes, they're either moving on for $1 million bonus or we'll next see them in 2024. In the UFC, matchmaking, who knows what's really at stake. Third thing, production. Here's where PFL's really won. UFC hasn't changed to 4 steady cameras since 1973, when boxing was invented. Think of how much we have benefited from the yellow line in football or the pitch box in baseball. We developed at PFL the smart cage. So we show you punch impact. We show you heart rate. We show you a ref cam of knockout. We show you real-time scoring of betting odds, who's winning, who's losing on the screen. So if you're called a sport fan, but you don't really understand how great these athletes are or who's winning and losing or what's going on, we make it easy for you to get in that fight. Effectively, we give you the yellow line of football and we give you the pitch box of baseball, which has never happened before. So that's why our audience has grown so fast. Great fighters, more at stake for every fight, so more exciting fights, and cool graphics and next generation production that lets you know what's going on. You don't have to be a diehard wonk to get it.
What's your audience demo?
MMA audience demo is the same as PFL. Average age, 35, youngest in all sports, and 18 to 35 is 50% of that audience, about 2/3 male. So why is it so attractive for streaming? That's why. This is ground zero for the audience everybody wants. That's true for UFC. It's true for PFL.
How do you reach my focus group of one, which is my 14-year-old? How do you reach the next generation of fans? I consider 12, 13, 14 the next generation. 18 to 34, I consider them, they're locked in, they're loaded. I understand. You can reach them more traditionally, even though they like the enhancements you're talking about. I don't know, how do you reach my kid?
Well, at PFL, we're doing two things. One, we have actually taken a different view of distribution in the UFC. We're very broad. We're in linear and streaming and mobile almost everywhere. So we're in 150 countries. And in every country, we try to do all three forms of distribution. So we're not behind a big paywall like UFC. They're in heavy, heavy monetization mode. So, for example, in India and Africa, which are the two biggest growth markets, I know your kids are not in India and Africa, but to answer the question more broadly, 2% of the people in India and 2% of the people in Africa could see UFC because it's behind a double paywall. 50% of the people in India and Africa can see PFL. So we've gone very broad with our distribution. That's answer one. Answer two is we've gamified our experience. So we give them a lot of cool stuff. So we do something called the PFL AI scoring. We have a computer score the event. After every round, we show you what the computer scored. Very cool gamification. It's actually 100% accurate. So what do you want to do most of the time when you want to argue with your friends after each round? Hey, Eben, who won that round? No, they won that round. We'll show you the computer said it was a 189 round after that round. So we give gamification in the fight. Very important for the young demo.
Scott, I would bet that if you asked your son to name some professional fighters, I bet Jake Paul's name would come up pretty soon.
Yeah, I think he would. I think you're right.
Recent signing for PFL. Don, give me your thoughts on Jake. 5 years ago was a YouTube sensation, has become a boxer, and now something more. What do you see in what he's done? And I'm sure there's business lessons you think of about the way in which very quickly he and his brother have cracked.
Where's he ranked? Give me a ranking on Jake Paul. Where's he ranked?
So it's interesting. I'll say two things about Jake. If you haven't seen the Netflix documentary on Jake, it's only an hour. If all kids think, hey, I'm going to be an influencer because it's easy work, you want to see how hard that guy works? Go ahead and watch that hour documentary. He is working 15, 16 hours a day of easy work, right, to build. He has a current social media platform bigger than the UFC himself. Think of that. 85 million active followers, Jake Paul alone. But what he really does is authenticity. He posts himself. He writes himself. He creates himself. Too many people, Mr. Beast is the same. What this generation wants is, I don't want a corporate monolith spitting out stuff. I want people telling me things that are real. So Jake is vulnerable. Jake can be vulgar. Jake can be hurt. Jake can be boastful. Jake can be sad, and Jake can be on the top of the world. He gives you what he's really feeling. Now, when you turn to him as a fighter, Scott, to your question, I'll answer what Tyson's, Fury's, and Tommy Fury's dad said. Thank God for Jake Paul, or my son wouldn't have this payday. He goes, there are so many good fighters who can't get anybody paid, and he's getting my son paid.
It's the John Skipper approach. Just get me eyeballs, I'll figure out how to monetize.
Correct. So to me, look, Conor McGregor, he's not a top 25. He might not be a top 50 fighter today. Fans don't care. You got to be good enough, and you better fight damn hard. Well, Jake Paul, I put in that same category as Conor McGregor. Good enough and fights damn hard. But is he or Conor McGregor in the top 25 or top 50 in the world today of everyone? Probably not.
Hey, listen, it's a meritocracy, Tom. We talked about it. Fans want to see what fans want to see. Rankings aside, I totally agree. If it doesn't matter, if people show up and they want to, fork over their hard-earned cash to watch this guy for whatever reason, it almost has, I think, a little bit of Howard Stern. Half the audience loved him, half the audience hated him, and I know I'm going to be crazy here. Half the audience wanted to see what he would say next. I think with Jake it's probably the same thing. Half love him and half want to see him get his brains beaten in. But it doesn't matter as long as they're tuning in.
But I'll tell you, he is training as hard or harder than anybody, and he's more serious than anybody I've met, in terms of, wanting to make a mark. And that's us at PFL. Look, we're entrepreneurs who are dead serious about growing the sport and being serious and fighter first. And you want to know somebody who cares about advancing the sport and making a fighter first path for the athletes? That's Jake Paul.
Don, let's shift to the cap table and the business a little bit. Scott and I were looking before we came on at PFL Investors. It is essentially a who's who of people in our world in very different disciplines. You have sovereign wealth and Surge Sports and the Saudi PIF Fund. You have private equity and Ares. You have traditional sports team owners, Ted Leonsis and David Blitzer. There's celebrities like Kevin Hart. There's tech billionaires like Brandon Beck. How is that intentional of you? How do you think about when you're looking to raise money, where it is you want to get it from, and who provides what kind of value to the PFL business?
Yes, 100% intentional for the reasons you can imagine. When you're building a new sports league, there are very few sports leagues that ever get built. You want to have all the help and all the expertise you can get. So look, I'm 60 years old. I've built dozens of companies and invested in 60 or 70 more. So what I've learned is having the best investors who can connect and help you is important. So everybody I sought out who I thought could help us. So it's a privilege to have these people involved, not just have their money. Full stop.
This is happening in traditional sports, by the way, where when people are looking to raise money, it's not just the how much can you bring, because the capital is the capital. It's Correct. What are the synergies? What are your other expertises? How do Correct. You help us in the bigger picture?
But the second thing is, in most traditional sports, the business model is hardened. Right? They've been around 100 years, or the decisions are controlled by somebody else. Call it the league or a consortium of 32 owners. Keep in mind with the PFL, we're essentially a controlled league. So we control all our IP, all our media rights, all our global expansion, and all our decisions centrally. So when we really want to have expertise or help, we think of an idea today, we can execute it tomorrow on a global basis. So that made it extra important for us not to just have marquee names, but industrial strength people around the table. What I think most of these people saw, Evan, the second part of your question is, a business model and a growth model that was very different in their portfolio. When you think of traditional sports, they're typically US-centric based, they're pretty capital heavy, and they're pretty mature. MMA, global, asset light, and just starting its growth period as a business. So it's almost like you're building your stock portfolio in your 401k. You want to have high growth, global, and call it different behavior of a business model in your sports and media portfolio.
Now you want to reallocate your 401k though as your timeline changes to retirement. Does that work for your business cycle as well? Is there a reallocation, or no? You can go with an original plan no matter whether it's early, middle, or mature.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps. And look, I'll broaden this. MMA, it's not just PFL. So when you look at UFC or PFL, what people misunderstand is, remember that growth business curve we all got in business school, which we kind of only understood 20 years later? You have high growth, maturity, and decline. And this is true for every business, whether it's a salad company or whether it's sports. And MMA as a business is only 25 years old. The NBA is 78 years old. Baseball, 154 years old. Baseball in decline as a business. The NBA is just ending its high growth period. MMA is just starting its high growth period. So MMA as a business today is growing very, very, very fast. UFC, PFL. Baseball, if that was in your portfolio, modest growth, probably decline as a overall revenue pie. So that's just factual things that if you're really looking at investing versus just owning as a steward in your market, you got to be cognizant of.
Were you in on Sweetgreen also? Is that why you went for the salad business? I know Ted's in on Sweetgreen. You there too?
We were the founding investor of Sweetgreen and Kava. Yep. I'm proud of both those, yes.
Yeah, I think my wife single-handedly keeps you guys where you want to be.
Yes.
They just opened one in Montclair, New Jersey, and I got to tell you, the requests come just too often for me.
Yes, my partners and I did both those. Great companies.
Don, the Middle East, it seems like it is becoming a bigger and bigger player in fight sports. The PIF invested in PFL. The UFC WWE tie-up obviously has ties to Saudi Arabia. Qatar has invested in one. There's a lot of geopolitical events happening right now in the Middle East, the war in Israel. How much do you think that affects, if it continues long-term, opportunities and partnerships that companies like yours may have in the Middle East?
Yeah, look, I sought out PIF. I needed to have the best global investor. MMA is a global sport. PFL has huge global ambitions. We had the best U.S. investors, as you guys pointed out earlier. We needed the best global investors. Very fortunate, given their network, to be able to have them as investors. I would say two things about the Mideast. One, in terms of sports, I think they will be the biggest, most impactful investors as sports goes more global. Obviously, streaming global, that's changing everything in the media market. The media market drives sports. So I think you'll see them invest more and more broadly in sports. It's just starting very, very, very early. Two, as hosts of sports, the Middle East is the new Vegas. Vegas in the 60s, 70s, and 80s was everything in combat sports and even other sports. Mideast is the new Vegas. You will see every big fight happen in the Mideast. That is where not only the money is, but the desire to host these mega events. So I think you will see it both ways as an investor in major properties. And those major properties, I believe, will be soccer, MMA, and basketball, because those are the three only global sports. And I think the hosting will also follow global sports, where they believe they can have the most financial return and the most impact on the people in KSA in the region.
Go ahead, Scott.
I'm saying, could there be, is there a possibility of a retrenchment because of geopolitical strife?
I don't believe so. I think, sports tends to rise above geopolitics. It does so in our country. It tends to do so globally. Occasionally you have hiccups around this or that country in the Olympics, but more and more people are trying to say, let's not penalize athletes. Let's not penalize fans. Let's look past points of time, and let's use sport as a unifier, not a divider. So I think there'll continue to be, perhaps, turbulence in small events. But I think if you look at a 10 to 20-year horizon, sports will be a unifier. Sports will be global, and the fans and the athletes will be put ahead of blips.
So what do you do with the capital? You mentioned your centralized league. You can be a little bit more nimble than some of the others. But, the NFL, we talk about it, NFL teams as one of NFL proper, 32 equity. They're investors. They'll take equity in a company, take flyers. There's real estate, there's media, there's tech. What does Donn Davis see as the opportunity for PFL as an investor with some of this capital?
There's two big areas we're investing in. One, athletes. No surprise. The best talent always wins in sports. Francis Ngannou, Jake Paul, those are the two biggest pay-per-view events for 2024 people want to see. They're both at PFL. Think of that. This little company that was nowhere a couple of years ago. Not UFC, but PFL will have the biggest pay-per-view events in 2024. So we want to build the biggest events that people want to see, so we'll continue to recruit talent. The second area I find even more interesting are international regional leagues. We launched PFL Europe this year. They're all European fighters. They're all held in Europe. They're all primetime Europe. So those 650 million MMA fans that we all talked about, 85% are not in the U.S. So it's the same overlap of soccer. The 3 billion soccer fans, 85% are not in the U.S. That's why there's 12 soccer leagues in the world. Remember, MLS, that we all go, woo, that's the 12th soccer league by quality and size. There are 11 bigger soccer leagues in the world. We want to be the Champions League of MMA, to borrow the soccer term. So we're launching PFL Mideast in the first quarter of 2024. All Mideast fighters, all held in the Mideast, all primetime in the Mideast. We are launching PFL Africa first quarter of 2025. All African fighters, all held in Africa, all broadcast primetime Africa. And we will also roll out Australia, Mexico, and India in the following years. Why that is so important.
I was waiting for the India. Everybody tells me the opportunities available in India.
Yes. So why that's so important is, to borrow a term from all my technology company building and investing, is network effects. So if you're a fighter and you're growing up, you want to move to PFL Africa because you now have the broadest distribution of your brand, the most opportunity to advance to become PFL champion of Africa, the best development for your fighting with those coaches. And if you win PFL Africa, you automatically go to PFL Global. So it's the first system for fighters. Now, if you're fans, regardless of where you are, you can start to follow PFL Africa, PFL India, PFL Mideast, and those champions will all fight one another. So we now have benefits, brand, benefits, audience, benefits, fighters in the first ever Champions League of MMA. UFC has a much parochial, backward vision of MMA. We'll export one event a year to different territories. We'll take the circus on the road. That's a US-centric view. That's a 20-year-old view of the world and the fans and the media. So PFL Global will still have the biggest fighters, the biggest purses, the biggest distribution, but all these regional leagues will start to engage fighters, engage fans where they're at. That's the second place we're investing, not just capital, but a ton of strategic time and hiring the best people and the best fighters locally. And the success point, last Sunday, PFL Paris, Mbappe is in the front row watching Cedric Doumbé, and everybody on Twitter and Instagram said it was the best fight in the last 3 months.
So now, if Mbappe puts something on, if Mbappe puts something out on his Instagram, I can tell you my son knows about it.
You ask him.
That I can tell you for
Mbappe
sure.
put out last week, Cedric Doumbé, PFL Paris, and he's in the front row. We didn't pay him. We didn't call him. He called us. Cedric Doumbé at PFL Europe is his favorite fighter. It's crazy.
Hey, Don, I'm going to do my Kreskin.
Yeah.
You and I are the same age. Remember Kreskin? Remember when
I love Kreskin. And Johnny
so I'm
Carson.
going to do my Kreskin
Carson.
here because Novy-Williams and I, we've been doing this a long time, and I can see him. I can see in his eyes. I can see it's almost time for him because you said the B word earlier, and he hasn't brought it up. And we're talking about capital. With that comes the possible consolidation of leagues. And I can see him just frothing at the mouth. So I'm going to tee him up because I don't want to steal his thunder. Eben Novy-Williams, was this the right time? Is this where you were about to really probe double N Donn Davis Kreskin? Yeah, here we go. Hold on. Is this where you were going to ask about the B word? Is this the time?
Exactly, yeah.
I knew it.
MNA, not MNA.
There we, not MMA, MNA. There you go. Go for it.
Yeah, Don, there's heard some rumors and also seen some reports about PFL looking at potentially acquiring Bellator, another rival MMA promotion. Where do those stand? Is that accurate? Is that true? What can you tell us about those talks?
As you would suspect, I wouldn't comment on anything that may or may not be happening in the market. But what I would say is this. In the world of consolidation, we would have no interest in brand, business, distribution of any other company. PFL already has secured brand, business, and distribution. Number 2 to UFC, locked, hard locked. Can't do any better, can't improve. What would be interesting is athlete talent. There's great athlete talent, lots of places. UFC wouldn't want you to think this because they want you to think they're the NFL and they got everybody. Ain't true. Great athlete talent elsewhere. We sign them, call it 1, 2, 3 at a time, every 4, 5, 6 months. When they become free agents, they like PFL, they come here. If we could acquire bulk talent, that'd be interesting, hypothetically. So I think if we were going to do any kind of acquisitions, it would be of companies that had really good talent that we could acquire in bulk. That would be interesting.
How does your athlete compensation compare to?
That was going to be my question, Eben.
Kreskin. Look at that.
Yeah, Kreskin, there you go.
So it's interesting. I'll give you guys a quick primer, really, for your audience, because we can demystify this. The average fighter pay at UFC or PFL per fight is $100,000 a fight. So that's true at UFC or PFL. Every time an average fighter. Now it could be as low as $25,000, as high as $500,000. So this is non-pay-per-view. If you tune on TV, this is the highest level. So we pay the same as UFC pays per fight, give or take, a little bit here, a little bit there. The big benefit at PFL is you get more fights. Right, you typically average between 2.5 and 3 fights a year, and you know when those fights are happening. So you have more predictability with us, just like you're a regular athlete, And the big, big, big thing is if you win the championship, you get a $1 million bonus every year on top of that. So think of it this way. What if Kyrie Irving in Game 7 of the NBA Finals was playing for $500 million, $500 million? That's 10 times his annual salary. These fighters are fighting for 10 times their average annual salary on November 24th at the PFL Championship. And we've awarded $31 million checks, which is more than the UFC's done in 30 years. So the bonus money you get by becoming a champion, and there's only 12 people in each weight class. And you think, if you're a fighter, you're so confident, you think 6 of them are schmoes. You think 6 of them are, like when you used to walk into, English class, you think half the class is an idiot, so you're only competing against half. So think of this as in that terms. If you average $100,000 a fight and your bonus is $1 million by becoming champion, Kyrie's got the ball with 7 seconds left for $500 million. That's the drama and the upside in the PFL.
I'm fascinated by one thing. Why in name did you pick Kyrie Irving in that situation?
Well, he's
Kyrie
known
Irving.
maybe known not to give it his all at times, and so
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
he'd give it his all for $500 million.
Got it. Okay. I can get a good fourth quarter out of Kyrie if he's got $500 million on the line. Got it. And by the way, we figured it out. We have solved the puzzle, Novy-Williams. The second N stands for no comment.
Oh.
There we go. Now we know. Now we know. Don,
All right.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us.